Okay, so if I was going to learn jazz drums all over again from the start, like I had to start over, I didn't have any of my skills, any of my knowledge, I would do it a different way. And I think it would make it go a lot faster and make it a lot more fun and have a better result. So, in order to tell you what I would do differently if I was going to start over, let me first tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got here. So basically, the way I learned, way I started playing drums is, I played guitar when I was 12 or 11 or something like that. Then I went to band class and I wanted to play guitar in band class in school. And they didn't have that, so I played drums. I was like, let me play drums for a year, and I just loved it so much. And I started learning, like a lot of people do, very like reading focused, right? So we had a book in band class, and I would learn from that. And that taught us rhythms, it taught us quarter notes, eighth notes, very logical. And that just made sense to me. And I liked kind of figuring that out. And then when it was time there was one song that we played drum set. Well, I loved figuring out like the coordination of all of it, like how to coordinate my hands and feet together. And I remember walking around during classes and kind of like tapping on my knees and stomping my feet, trying to figure out exactly how all the eighth notes went together in a rock beat. And because of that, I got the coordination down and I got to be the one who played the drum set in the concert. So after that, I was sold, I was hooked, right? And then it just kind of kept going from there. Like the next year, I got an opportunity to play in the school jazz band. And there I started to learn, about chart reading and big band and setups and stuff like that. And around the same time, I started taking my first drum lessons. I think I was in the jazz band before I started taking my first drum lessons, actually. When I got to my first drum lessons, what did they do? They grabbed a book and they gave me a book that went through different coordination, different reading, stuff to get my hands and feet coordinated. And I just loved that stuff. I would go home and I would practice it, and I really liked figuring out all the dots and dashes of all this stuff. And, I would go to my big band and we would have different charts. I would read those and it all kind of made sense. Reading, coordination, chart reading, boom. Like if I could put those things together, I was good, okay? I loved playing jazz music, okay? And because of that, I pursued all the opportunities that I had to start doing that. And it was really cool. I got to, when I was a young person, there was a great teacher I had. His name was Greg Metcalf, and he ran a local jazz camp during the summer for young people. And he was really cool because we started learning jazz standards, right? So we started playing tunes like, I remember we played Moment's Notice when we were in like 8th grade or something. I don't know why we played that song. That's such a hard song. We played songs like Tangerine. We played a Song for My Father. We played songs that, jazz tunes that actual people played. So I started getting familiar with these, and then I would listen to the original recordings. And then he also told me, he was the first person to tell me, go check out this drummer. And I remember it was Art Blakey. He said, you should try to play the cymbals kind of like Art Blakey plays the cymbals. I had no idea what that meant. But I just knew when he told me that I would go find every Art Blakey recording that I could find. And I think this was in the era where I went and maybe downloaded it legally or not legally, And I got all the Art Blakey I could. So this was when I really got introduced to listening. And, that's where things really took off. Around that same time, I had a drum teacher who, he took me through the John Riley book, the coordination, dialing that in. He recommended that I start listening to Tony Williams. I remember I listened to Tony Williams on 7 Steps to Heaven from 4 and More with Miles Davis, and it blew my mind. Like, I had no idea something like that could ever even exist. And it was so incredible. I listened to that album for, I think, a month and a half straight. It was the only thing I listened to every time I listened to anything, right? And this is when I started getting really, really inspired by this. So I was playing with these different people, and then I remember I had this really formative experience where I was at this camp in California. I think it was actually at Disneyland. It was some Disneyland jazz festival where different schools came and played or something. I don't know. It was at Disneyland, but I was lucky I got to do stuff like that. But they had a session where in front of everybody, they pulled random names out of a hat, and I think they played one tune. and at a jam session. I don't think I'd ever done that before. And I was like, I really hope they don't call my name. And then they pulled my name. I was the one drummer, I think. And I went in front of this whole crowd of everybody. And I remember playing with this bass player who was like a professional, one of these LA studio guys. And he was like looking over at me and like vibing. You know, I was maybe 15 or 16. It's like I couldn't play that well. But he looked like he really enjoyed playing with me. And I remember he was doing cool things that, you know, I had never even dreamed of, and I felt like I could like catch some of the things that he was doing and play off of it. And there was a great saxophonist and all these different people. And after I was done, I remember my band director at the time telling me, you sounded so great. Everything was so tasteful. That was so beautiful. And I remember everybody applauded after it happened. It was a really great experience for me. It's my first jam session, I think, which is crazy. And after that, I was like, I think that's when I decided, like, yeah, this is for me. Like, I want to do that. Whatever that was, playing with better musicians, like going up and just playing with everybody, like, and I've never played before, like, that's for me. I want to do that. And so that's really what the next step was jam sessions, right? And then, you know, after that, it was maybe a couple years. I went to music school. I went to college. There was this, I was very lucky in college. There was this local pizza place in town. It was a very small town in Washington. There was nothing going on, but we had this jam session at this pizza place that we did every single week. You know, there was maybe 12 of us or something, 15 of us, but we all went almost every single week, and we were pretty much like the only people in the pizza place. But it was so important to me because, you know, there was me. I was a freshman at this college, and then there was more experienced players, and I remember like I would get to play with some of the more experienced players, and then they would play together and I'd see them interacting, and they knew all the tunes, and so all these tunes, I just started learning them. I never had to like sit down and learn tunes, you know? I just went to these jam sessions and I just heard them so many times that I knew them. You know, maybe there was a couple that I was like, oh, that one was weird, I'm gonna go listen to that in my free time, you know? And I just knew all the tunes by the time I was done with that. And then after that, you know, I was really lucky, and I transferred to a bigger school with a better jazz drum set teacher. And this guy was like, he was the man. He pretty much told me, like, you need to be invested in studying the greatest jazz drummers of all time, listening straight to the source, right? Transcribing, taking from your favorite jazz drummers, right? I had done a little bit of this before. Like when I was, you know, end of high school, early college, I was starting to do this on my own. I had a great teacher named Gary Williams who kind of pushed me in this direction, but nobody was ever like, this is the main thing you need to do. And so that's when I got into transcribing, okay? All of a sudden I'm learning Philly Joe licks. All of a sudden I'm learning Mel Lewis setups for big band, right? And he really emphasized how I play with people. He also like emphasized like, yo, you need to like play for the benefit of the band, make the band sound good, play things that make the band feel good, right? So let's see, my notes are let's see if I can move this up, right? So support is what I'm gonna write, you know? How do you make the band sound good? How do you make your time feel good? You know, how do you make all that sound good? And he also showed me how to do that physically with my body, right? How to move in time, and how that if you move in time, you'll play in time. And that's how you get your flow going, right? Now, I should add, like in this, I'm going fast here, in this like chart reading coordination era, I also like did marching band. So I did a lot of technique, which was kind of like the same thought process. It's like this analytical kind of stuff. It was all very like, you know, muscle and technique and all this stuff. But then now I'm here, I'm like, support the band, make them feel good, you know, play for the benefit of the band, like Baby Dodd said. This guy was so inspirational for me, so pivotal in my life. And then after that, what really happened is, you know, all of a sudden the focus was more about like, oh, I moved to different cities, and every different city I would play with, like I could already play kind of. I knew a bunch of tunes, I had some ideas. And I, you know, tried to support the band and make them feel good so people could play off me. And then it was about like, oh man, I actually got to like go to jam sessions, you know, back to here again. And it was more focused this time on like play with people, right? And I realized actually that since I could do all the playing, that it was more about the people, right? It was more about like, oh, I've never been to Indianapolis. I don't know anybody here, but I'm going to go to this jam session and I'm going to shake hands and make friends, you know? I'm going to like, you know, just meet people so that I feel comfortable playing with them, so that they know me, they see my face, they want to play with me some more. And it was the same thing when I moved to Chicago. It's like, just be out, you know, just be seen, just be around people, build relationships, invite people over to hang out at your house or your studio or whatever and have a session just to play. Be at every jam session, know everybody, know what's going on in their lives, you know, just be a friend, right? Has nothing to do with music, but it also has everything to do with music, okay? And then it's really like, once I got to that point, it's like, man, I'm so happy, right? Because everything kind of stacked up. It's like I can play, and now I'm playing with people. This is what I wanted to do all along. It's so fun, it's so filling, it's so free. Now, here's the thing. This was a very exhausting journey. It took a lot of work, right? And I'm glad I did it this way because it built a lot of character. I'll talk about that in a moment. But I think that there's a better way. I think that there is a better way. And I think that a lot of the pain can be skipped. Maybe not skipped. Maybe dove in right into, right? Because first let's talk about how I would do this again if I started all over again, and how I see people who do this way actually being the most successful, having the most fun, all this stuff, okay? So basically, if I was going to do all of this again, I would just do it backwards. I would just do it backwards, okay? So the very first thing that I would do if I had to start over today is I would play with people, even if I didn't really know how to play. That sounds crazy, right? And what I mean by this is I would find the nearest jam session. I would find the nearest hang. I would find where people are playing this music, and I would go there, and I would meet people, I would make friends, and I would ask to sit in and play a song the best I could, you know? And the reason I say this is because that will tell you everything you need to know in order to do all the rest of this stuff. And the challenge that I faced is that I got so caught up in the details here that there was this switch I had to make. And I mentor a lot of drummers who want to become jazz drummers, and I see them getting caught up in this trap, is that they learn this way by reading, coordination, chart reading, listening. Well, they don't get here. They don't get to the listening part soon enough. But they start with this really technical stuff, and then it makes it very hard to switch to this more, I don't know, like this more abstract stuff, this looser stuff, this more big picture stuff, which actually is the important part, okay? And so they have a big, like, you know, pain when it's time to switch here. And it also leads to, here, it leads to a lot of fear. It leads to like, I don't want to go up on that stage because I don't know if it's going to come out right. It's going to come out awkward. I don't know. I'm going to get lost in the form. I'm going to like drag. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to play in a jazz style. It's going to be bad, right? So, and I think that happens because of the way we learn. So if you start by just going and playing with people, what you're going to have to deal with is fear of all those things I just said. Because guess what? You don't know anything. You can't play. Which, you know, to be honest, when I got here, when I got, you know, up here anyways, I realized what I didn't know. When I got to the play with people stage, I realized anyways that I didn't really know as much as I thought. But what we're doing, if we start with that, is we're just confronting it. We're just making the real work the real work. And the real work is to like go, get on the stage, play at the session, find out that you don't know what you don't know. And then at least it'll be out in the open. Now you know what you need to focus on, okay? And you'll find that what you need to focus on is like, oh, I'm playing with people. Like, I don't know any of these tunes, right? Like, I don't know any of these songs. Like, okay, what song are they playing? But here's the thing, you're gonna learn them faster because you're at the session every week listening to the songs, right? Just like in this stage where I was going to the pizza place, I just kind of learned them naturally. If you're at this session, you're going to need to learn the songs, but here's the thing is you're going to learn them quickly because you're there, you're hearing them in context. And then what I would do is I would stack on top of that by, like, when I hear I'll Remember April, oh, like, let me go listen to that in my free time. Let me go check out you know, Have You Met Miss Jones, or Countdown, or Giant Steps, or Song for My Father, right? I'm going to listen to that walking around all day, every day, so that it just becomes a part of me. It's natural. It's just like the language that I speak, you know? So I would be listening to those songs all the time, and then all of a sudden I would go to those sessions every week, and I'm checking in because I have a goal every week to go to this session and maybe play one song. But then I'd be like, cool, I'm like playing the songs, but like I don't have anything to play. Like, I was listening to the Max Roach version of Cherokee, and he plays this awesome solo, and I have no idea what that stuff is. And I can't play any of that stuff. When I play a solo, it's just like quarter notes and eighth notes or whatever. Or when I hear the other guys at the session playing a solo, they play a bunch of cool paradiddles, I think, I don't know, something. And I want to learn that stuff. And so that's when I would start to learn ideas. And I would do that by listening. And the cool thing, and you're starting to see why this is so good, is that I was already listening to tunes. I already knew that Max Roach played on I'll Remember April with Clifford Brown, right? So I already knew that he's the guy to listen to. Okay, so let me go figure out what Max Roach is, right? Instead of doing it the other way where it's like, I don't know what drummers to listen to. I don't know what I'm listening for. No. I need to play a solo because I play with people every week, right? So I need to like listen to this solo on this tune, and I need to figure out how to play that, okay? Great. So now I have a goal. I need to be able to play a solo idea. So my goal is a solo idea. Great, let's do some transcribing, right? And transcribing, a lot of people think it's like listening and writing it down. It actually doesn't have to be that. That's one method. Transcribing is just listening to something and figuring it out, figuring out how to play it. So if you can put on a Joe Morello recording or a, Art Taylor recording, and you can figure out what he's playing and how he's playing it, that's transcribing. And I would start transcribing, how to solo at a medium tempo. I would start transcribing Latin beats so I can play Latin songs. I would start transcribing, how to comp at a fast tempo. I would start transcribing how to solo at a fast tempo. I would start learning all these things, right? And then all of a sudden I would realize, oh man, I know what he's playing. I know what he's playing there. Like Max is playing this like paradiddle thing. It's right, like, okay, I got that figured out. Okay, but like I can't play it. It doesn't come out right. It doesn't, like, my hands aren't fast enough or whatever, right? Or when I'm doing that Elvin pattern, it's like everything gets messed up. I don't know. It just doesn't land right. It doesn't sound right. It's awkward when I try it at the session. It doesn't feel right. And so then I need to focus on coordination and technique. I'm just gonna write tech. There you go. Okay, cool. So now, and it's compounding here. I'm playing with people so that I know I need to play these tunes, and I'm listening to these tunes, so it's already got me listening, and now I know what to transcribe and what I need to play on these tunes. And now I just need to figure out how to play it. And here's the thing, I'm not doing a whole bunch of coordination exercises. I don't have to go through a million pages of whatever, stick control. It's a great book. It's a great book for what it is, but I don't have to go through the whole thing. I just need to figure out the coordination to play the paradiddle phrase that I learned from Philly Joe Jones. Great, that's narrowed down. That's gonna save me a lot of time. Is I just have to focus on this one thing that's gonna help me the most, right? Now, I might realize that I can't play fast enough and I need to create a couple exercises. Maybe I do need to go through a page of stick control, whatever the best page is. But it's going to be supporting whatever it is that I'm trying to do musically, right? And so everything's going good, right? I'm playing at these jam sessions all the time. I always know the tunes. I never get lost because I learned them by listening. I went to all the jam sessions. I'm listening to jazz music all the time, and I'm transcribing all the time. So I know all these phrases for Max Roach and Philly Joe and Tony Williams. I'm starting to get into Elvin Jones. So when people hear me, and I figured out the coordination, so my time's good, like my My technique is good, things are coming out, I sound like a drummer, things are smooth, right? And so all of a sudden, what would start happening here is that people would be like, yo, I want to play with you. Like, let's play a gig together. Let's start to have a band or something. Okay, cool. So we roll up to band rehearsal, and what do? They give me a couple of these. They give me some sheet music. They give me some charts. And I'm like, oh, hold on. I never learned to read here. I listened the whole time. I learned by ear. I learned in the field. Okay, so now I have to learn how to read music. Okay? And you might be watching this saying, I learned how to read music when I was 10. That's great. That's great. I did too. Okay? So then you need to learn how to read music. But here's the thing. You're going to have to learn how to read this lead sheet. And I have to say, lead sheets are pretty basic for jazz music. You can kind of squint your eyes and look at a lead sheet and be able to get your way through it. You just see the shape of it. And then things are gonna get more complex. Maybe you start playing some big band music, something with hits, something that's more arranged. And then you're gonna need learn how to read all these rhythms and stuff. You're gonna learn how to sight read and all this stuff. And maybe you can go back and you can try to understand your solos that you transcribed by writing them out in notation. So you're gonna go through that, you're gonna start to figure that out. But the cool thing is that all of this is going to be informed by your ears, which ultimately, let's be real here for a second, you can play music without learning how to read. You can't play music without learning how to listen. Everybody has to listen. And for me, it took me all the way until halfway through my journey or something like that to focus on listening the most, because I was taught by reading and taught by analysis. I'm thankful for it. It is my journey, and that's how a lot of people are taught, and I had great mentors. But I'm just saying, if I was going to optimize for the most efficient thing, that's probably what I'd do. So everybody has to listen. The thing is, you started, if you did this path, this right-hand path, by playing with people, by learning tunes, by listening, by transcribing. And then you got your coordination, and then now you're finally reading, but you're reading with your ears. You're reading, your main way of understanding music is your ears. And so you barely have to read, or actually what it's gonna feel like for my guys who have learned by ear first and then learned to read later, is usually it feels like, oh yeah, I've always known what that was by listening. Now I just see that it's written. Now it's actually really easy to learn how to read. Whereas when you start by learning how to read, it's very, it can be kind of cumbersome. It takes a lot of thought. People often get stuck in it. It becomes over analytical, and it's very hard to translate. Whereas if you do it this way, it's kind of like if you spoke Spanish your whole life and then somebody just showed you how to write it. It's like, oh yeah, I know that word. You just showed me what it looks like. So you already have this framework built in. So you learn how to read, and then now who are you? Who are you? You're somebody who can play with people. You know a ton of tunes. You listen all the time, so you know tunes. You know the tunes that people play. You transcribe your favorite drummers. You transcribe their comping. You transcribe their solo ideas. You understand them, and you can play ideas that make sense, that make you sound like a jazz drummer, so people want to play with you. And then you figured out how to play them correctly, how to execute them correctly by doing technique, by maybe doing your rudiments, by understanding how you move. And then you figured out how to read music so that you can, read some charts, you can sight read, you can learn music for gigs very quickly. You've got it. You've done it. You are a jazz drummer. You're full stack, baby. If you go this way. Now here's the thing. The reason that we don't, there's a couple of reasons we don't. I won't go too much into the structure of pedagogy, but it is easier just as a pedagogue to, I learned in 6th grade band class, right? Right here. Of course I learned by reading, because it's easy for us to get a book. It keeps us all on track. Imagine if we were just all, man, this would be so cool. Imagine if we just all went to a session. It doesn't make for an efficient school day, So that's part of it. And it also makes sense in private lessons, right? Because it's easy for your teacher to have a book, and then they work on the same thing every time, and they can give you a book and it keeps you on track, keeps them on track. It makes sense why we learn this way. you know. But let's talk about for you, you know, because maybe you're somewhere along this journey. Maybe you already know how to read. Maybe your coordination is good, you know. Maybe you're almost all the way there. You just need to transcribe a little, you know. So let's talk about each step, why people don't really do it, right? The first thing is, I wonder if I can get a different colored pen. Let's try it. Yeah, okay, cool, right here. People are afraid to play with people because it's like, I'm gonna go up on stage, I'm gonna get lost in the form, I'm gonna embarrass myself, I'm gonna slow down, I'm gonna speed up, I'm gonna play too loud, I'm going to play too soft, I'm going to have a bad time feel, I'm going to play a bunch of boring ideas that are repetitive, and the people who are around me won't want to play with me. I'm not going to listen enough, right? All these things. That makes it scary. And so most people, it is a bit too much to just go and get on that stage. But the bravest possible person in an ideal world, whatever, that they would just go straight to that, and then it would reveal the rest of it. It would be challenging, for sure. There's a lot to learn. But I think it would be more efficient because it would make the main thing the main thing. Okay, so that's the first step. That's why we don't like go and, you know, learn, just jump in and start playing with people. Okay, all right. So, and let's go through a couple of these other ones. So with tunes, for example, people are like, I don't know what tunes. What tunes do I need to learn? Right? Or I'm not familiar with jazz music. I was raised on rock, but now I want to play jazz, you know? The reason it's not familiar is because of this, right? It's because we didn't go to the session. If you went to the session, remember me at the pizza place? I knew what tunes people played because I just went to the session, you know? And the same thing here is like if you're listening, you'll learn the tunes that people play if you just listen to jazz music and you just kind of go down the rabbit hole because that's why people play the tunes. It'll be a little, you know, you can get a little distracted because there's some tunes that people listen to and that they don't play all the time, but you'll get there eventually. It's better if you combine the two, okay? And then why don't we like learn by listening first, you know? So I'll lump this together with transcribing, right? Like basically, why don't we learn by ear, you know? And the reason is because it's intimidating. Let me move this over. It's intimidating, right? It's like we turn on a recording of Buddy Rich or Billy Higgins or Tony Williams or Billy Hart, and it's like, or Billy Cobham, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand it, right? And usually that's like, because we're too focused on the details. We're trying to figure out all the little notes. We don't have context. We don't understand the big picture, so it's hard to focus and prioritize what's important and what's not important. What should I listen to? And that's really how you get good at this transcribing and listening stuff and learning by listening, is that you know what to prioritize, and then you can like zoom in and zoom out as needed, right? That's how you get really good at this. But it's too intimidating. And so, you know, again, just going back, if we learn from the bottom up here, then if you had the context because you went to jam sessions and you heard people play and you knew tunes, then it would be easy to have the context to learn by listening, to transcribe and, you know, listen, right? So that's why people usually don't do that. Coordination and technique. Here's the thing with coordination and technique. Coordination and technique, it really is, it's more a science than an art in most of this. There's a little bit of art to it. But coordination and technique, we should be trying to solve a problem so that we can play music. A lot of the times, if we learn this other way, we're doing coordination for coordination's sake. You know, we're doing exercises for exercises' sake. This is like, you know, the programs you go into and it's just like 1,000 pages of exercises, or the books you get that are every permutation or combination of exercises, which are good. Those helped me a lot. But like, let's go straight to the music we want to play and figure out the coordination that we need to play it. That's where people usually get lost. So it's kind of like overwhelm here. And then also with this, and this is maybe a different video, is that the way we practice coordination and technique is usually by just repetition, just playing it over and over again, where, you know how I said coordination technique, it's more of science than an art. With coordination technique, it very much should be about diagnose problem holding you back from playing music you want to play, hypothesis on how to fix problem, experiment, check your work, experiment, check your work, experiment, check your work. Result, add next thing, experiment, check your work, experiment, check your work. So this is like recording yourself. This is like playing smaller chunks. The reason people don't do that, which is like, every time I teach somebody how to do this, they're like, that was so dumb and obvious. But it's not complex or hard. Well, I should say this. It's simple, not easy, right? Because it requires patience. It requires slowing down. It requires like humbleness. There's a better word for that. Humility. It requires humility, saying like, I feel like I can almost play this if I just force my left hand to do it. I feel like I can force my left hand to do it. When if you just slow down and play it note by note, you will get it with your left hand, and then the muscle memory will kick in, right? Again, different video. I could talk about that all day. But it's really that with coordination and technique. Like, these things are very scientific, and when I explain them to people, it always just like makes sense. It's just we're in a rush, we're in a hurry, because what's happening is we learned this way, and we're not getting to play music. In this part down here, we're just playing a bunch of exercises, and we're in a rush to go play some music. Whereas like here, if we just started with playing music, then we would realize that like, oh, this is the one thing I have to work on. I'm gonna slow down and work on this, right? So that's where people get stuck with coordination technique. And then with reading music, it's pretty similar to the coordination technique thing. It's like overwhelm, it's overanalysis, and I'll say this too, this is actually the biggest thing, is it is not listening to what they're playing. It's trying to count things. They're like counting it right. It's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right? I'm saying the right counts, but it's not the right rhythm, right? Because if I was listening, I would know that it has to be a different rhythm, right? And where does that come from? Not enough context, not focusing on playing by ear, which is the whole point of reading the thing. The point of reading the music is to make the sound. So you have to focus on making it sound right. Listen to what you're playing. Hear it in your head before you play it. Focus on making reading about translating what you see into what you hear, right? This is where people tend to get stuck with all of these things, okay? So I started this by saying, here's how I would learn if I started all over. There's a reason why people don't learn this way usually, and it's because of this. This is tough to confront, right? It's tough to confront the fear. It's tough to confront this, the patience, the overwhelm. It's tough to confront this, intimidating, right? It's tough to like confront this. And if I were to put an emotion on this, it's like lost, confused, right? Sometimes feel stupid, out of the loop, that kind of thing, right? And that's why it ends up being hard to do this, is because it's emotionally hard. Playing the drums it's emotionally hard. It takes a lot of determination. It takes a lot of passion, right? And here's what I wouldn't change about how I learned the drums, okay? So this whole process, like, this takes a lot of energy. You have to drive through this, keep pushing. Same thing with the other one, push. Learn all these things, confront all these challenges. I went through all the challenges that you're gonna face at all these stages, right? It takes a lot of energy. But what I had that I am so grateful for, it's been one of my greatest assets in life, and a lot of musicians who I know who are really great musicians or, really enjoy playing music, know this and have this, is I had the fuel. I had the fuel to drive through all of this. None of these things were going to stop me, even if I did it upside down and backwards and wrong. Because I loved this, right? I was passionate about it. It was rewarding, You remember when I went to the jam session and I just felt incredible. That's not the only time in my life that I felt that way about music. I remember being in marching band and hearing a chord just hit for the first time and thinking, oh my God, that makes me feel incredible. And I also loved that, I could always get better at it. And I found that the best thing very early on, even when I was maybe like 12, that the best thing about playing music is that I could always get better at it, And so all of a sudden, all these challenges, they were just fun, they were exciting. They were an opportunity. That's what I wanted to do all the time. And I remember, deciding that I wanted to play music as a career because of these things, because I loved it, because I was passionate about it, and most of all, because it was something that I could always get better at, that I could always work on. And you've seen that the rewards from doing it have been vast. It's not just, learning how to read or getting a gig or, making $50 playing at a restaurant, at a pizza place. It's like, learning how to be a good friend, learning how to have discipline, patience, humility, confronting fear, being brave, being courageous, right? Supporting the people that you play with, listening, actually listening deeply, like how do you make the lives of the people you're playing with better, right? This is what I would not change, this stuff down here, right? And I think if you're going to go either of these routes, you're going to need that because it's going to get hard. There's going to be challenges. You're going to get stuck. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to drop your pen. You're going to want to quit. And so the things that I would focus on are the things that just give you as much of this as possible. And I'll tell you that that's why this path is good too, because playing with people is going to make you love it more. It's going to make you more passionate about it. Listening a lot is going to make you love it more. Just feed that passion. Whatever you're excited about, listen to the music you want to play. Practice the things you want to practice because it's going to be the fuel that you need to weather this whole journey. And I hope you do. Have fun.